My friends, what on earth was that last night? The Detroit Lions flat out handed the game to the Vikings, and the main culprit has a first and last name, John Morton. It's unbelievable what this man managed to do with an offense that had everything it needed to dominate. The play calling was timid, predictable, lifeless. The fans are furious, and rightfully so. Morton must have left his brain in the locker room, zero creativity, awful clock management, and a sick obsession with the same tired plays that everyone already knows are coming. While the Vikings were sending blitz after blitz, he just stood there, watching, doing nothing, no adjustments at all. And somehow, he still managed to underuse half of his offensive weapons, as if the Lions' offense were a one-man show. It was a masterclass in mistakes, stubbornness, and mind-boggling decisions that cost not just the game, but the pride of an entire fan base. Now I ask you, why? Why? John Morton, why? If Detroit wants to be taken seriously, something has to change, and fast. Because the way things are right now, this offense looks more like a bad joke than a unit dreaming of the playoffs. Honestly, pathetic. That was a brutal one. The Detroit Lions fell 24-27, and honestly, it wasn't just a loss, it was a collapse that exposed every weakness we thought this team had already overcome. Watching that game, it felt like the offense completely lost its identity. The rhythm, the aggression, the creativity that once defined this group were nowhere to be found. What we saw instead was confusion, conservative play calling, and a lack of urgency that left fans shaking their heads in disbelief. The conversation has to start with offensive coordinator Morton, because let's be real, this offense looked predictable from the opening drive. Screen pass after screen pass, 5 times in one game, the same call, same result, and 0 adjustments. When you have players like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta, there's no excuse for running an offense this flat. Morton's approach has turned what should be one of the most dynamic groups in the league into something utterly lifeless. It's the same story every possession. Shotgun on first down, run on second, screen on third, like a broken record that every defense already knows by heart. And then there's the offensive line. Injuries have gutted this unit. Taylor Decker, Mahogany, Tate Ratledge, all banged up at various points. The protection was disastrous. Jared Goff had no time, no comfort in the pocket, and when he did have a clean snap, his decision-making wasn't much better. Off-balance throws, balls in the dirt, plays that never had a chance. It's like watching a quarterback who doesn't trust what's happening in front of him, and who can blame him? This line, once the heart of Detroit's identity, looked overwhelmed, outmuscled, and unprepared. But the real frustration comes from the lack of adaptation. Dan Campbell said this team was going to come out stronger, more disciplined after the bye. Instead, it was penalties all over again. False starts, holding calls, missed assignments, undisciplined football that kills drives before they even start. It's hard to watch a team with so much talent, so much potential, shoot itself in the foot over and over again. The Vikings didn't do anything exotic. They came into Ford Field determined, physical, and focused, and they made the Lions look soft. Detroit acted like they could just show up and win, and that attitude cost them. This was supposed to be a statement game, a chance to show growth after a shaky stretch. Instead, it felt like a step backward, maybe even a free fall. And when the offense can't sustain drives, the defense starts breaking too. The edges weren't set all game long. Play action kept fooling the linebackers. Hutchinson didn't have the impact we're used to seeing. The whole group just looked out of sync. Let's talk about the refs for a second, because yes, there were a couple of terrible personal foul calls that completely swung momentum. But blaming officials doesn't fix what's wrong here. The bigger problem is that the Lions looked unprepared, uninspired, and completely lost in key moments. And that's coaching. You can't hide behind officiating when you spend 3 quarters refusing to stretch the field, only to finally dial up a deep shot to Jameson Williams when it's already too late. Where was that energy in the first quarter? Why wait until desperation sets in to trust your playmakers? Fans have every right to be angry. This isn't just about losing a game. It's about seeing the same issues repeat themselves week after week. Poor situational awareness, predictable play calling, a total lack of creativity. It's no wonder people are calling for Dan Campbell to take back the play calling duties. Morton just isn't getting it done. And if this team really believes it can contend for a Super Bowl, tough decisions need to be made now, not later. And let's be honest, 24 points against one of the league's worst defenses, that's unacceptable. When you have this kind of talent, that kind of performance is a failure at every level, coaching, execution, and mentality. This isn't a rebuild anymore. This is a contender playing like it forgot how to compete. The Lions can trade for defensive help all they want, but until the offense finds its rhythm and its leader, they're not going anywhere. Because if not now, when? The longer this offense keeps sputtering, the more this season risks slipping away. And the truth is, the Lions don't have time to waste. You can feel it in every fan's voice right now, frustration mixed with disbelief. This was supposed to be the year when Detroit took the next step, when all the pieces finally clicked. Instead, we're watching the same mistakes, the same lifeless approach, the same conservative play calling that has no place in a team with this kind of firepower. It's not just about play design, it's about energy, about intent. When the offense jogs onto the field, you can sense the hesitation. There's no aggressiveness, no swagger, no urgency. It's as if they're trying not to lose rather than going out there to dominate. And that mentality starts at the top. Morton looks completely out of answers, stuck in a loop of failed screens and shotgun runs that any defense can read from a mile away. Dan Campbell built this team on grit and identity, but right now, the offense doesn't reflect that at all. It's slow, it's cautious, and it's predictable. Those three words are the death of any contender. Even Jared Goff, who's been steady through much of the season, looks uncomfortable. His footwork has broken down. His timing is off. You see him throwing off his back foot, rushing passes that sail low or wide. It's not that he suddenly forgot how to play quarterback, it's that the structure around him is crumbling. When your offensive line is collapsing on nearly every drop back, when your coordinator keeps calling screens on 3rd and long, it becomes impossible to build rhythm or confidence. And when Goff struggles, the entire offense loses direction. Now, the defense, it wasn't great either. Calvin Shepard's group got exposed on the edges all game long. Play action kept biting them, and Minnesota took advantage every single time. Hutchinson was contained, the linebackers were late on reads, and the tackling was inconsistent. But can you really blame the defense when they're on the field constantly because the offense can't sustain drives? Eventually, fatigue sets in, mistakes multiply, and you start to see a unit that's fighting uphill for 4 quarters. And that's the heart of it. This isn't just one bad game. This is a pattern. Week after week, we're seeing the same flaws. The Lions start slow, settle for short passes, fall behind, and then try to play hero ball late when it's already too late. It's not sustainable. You can't win championships like that. You can't even win your division like that. Detroit's potential is being wasted by play calling that belongs in a preseason script, not in a meaningful divisional matchup. There's a reason fans are calling for change. Campbell did it once before. Remember year 1, when he replaced Anthony Lynn with Ben Johnson? It wasn't easy, but it worked. It sparked something. The offense found rhythm, balance, and identity again. Now it feels like it's time for history to repeat itself. Campbell needs to step in, take charge, and put this team back on track before it's too late. Because right now, it feels like the Lions are driving a sports car with the parking brake on. And it's not just about stats or score lines, it's about tone. When you look at this team, they don't look hungry. They look frustrated, tentative, and unsure. That edge that defined Detroit's rise over the last 2 seasons? Gone. And that should terrify everyone in the building. Because in the NFL, momentum is fragile. You lose it for a few weeks, and suddenly you're fighting just to make the playoffs instead of controlling your destiny. The locker room knows it too. Players like St. Brown, Gibbs, and Laporta aren't going to say it publicly, but you can feel the tension. They're being underused, trapped in an offense that doesn't maximize their strengths. When your most dynamic weapons spend entire drives running decoy routes or catching screens behind the line of scrimmage, something is seriously wrong. You can't waste this level of talent, not when you've spent years building toward this moment. This loss isn't the end of the world, but it's a wake-up call. The Lions still have time to fix things, to rediscover that balance between creativity and discipline, between risk and control. But it starts with accountability. Campbell has to look at his staff, look at the playbook, and make the hard decision. Because if Detroit keeps running the same tired script, it won't matter how talented this roster is. The season will end in disappointment, not destiny. And that brings me to you, the fans who've been through it all. You know this team better than anyone. You can see when something's off. So I want to know your take. Do you believe Dan Campbell has the courage to make that change right now? Should he take back the play calling and bring the fire back to this offense? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you're with me, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because this conversation is just getting started. Because make no mistake, what happens next could define the entire season. This isn't just about one loss to the Vikings. It's about what that loss revealed, cracks in the foundation, frustration in the locker room, and an offense that looks like it's lost its way. The Lions have reached a crossroads. Either they face this head-on and make the hard adjustments, or they keep pretending it's just one bad game until it's too late to fix anything. And you can tell this team feels that pressure. You can see it in Dan Campbell's body language on the sideline. You can feel it in the way the players talk after games, short answers, tired tones, no energy. This is not the same group that came out swinging earlier in the year, the one that played with confidence and aggression. Somewhere along the line, that spark dimmed. And the biggest fear right now is that the Lions might be losing what made them special, that raw, relentless edge that turned them from an underdog story into a legitimate contender. You look at the mistakes, and it's not just one thing. It's the false starts at home, the missed assignments, the unnecessary penalties that stall drives. Those are the signs of a team that's pressing, not executing. A team trying to force its identity instead of living it. When the fundamentals slip, it's a coaching issue. When the energy dips, it's a leadership issue. When the same mistakes keep happening, it's a culture issue. And that's what makes this moment so critical. Because Campbell has built something real in Detroit, a foundation of accountability, belief, and toughness. But right now, that foundation is being tested. The good news is that it's not too late. The NFC is still wide open, and the Lions are still in position to control their own fate. But it has to start with honesty. The coaching staff needs to stop defending the indefensible. Morton's scheme is predictable. Everyone knows it. Every defense knows it. Every fan knows it. And that predictability is killing the offense's rhythm, killing Goff's confidence, and wasting the prime of players like St. Brown and Gibbs. If Campbell wants to be the kind of coach who wins championships, not just hearts, he has to act decisively now. And for all the frustration, the pieces are still there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is still that heartbeat player who can carry a drive. Jameson Williams can stretch any defense in football if he's given the chance. Sam Laporta remains one of the most complete young tight ends in the league. Jahmyr Gibbs can break open games when he's used properly. The talent isn't the issue, the direction is. Give this offense structure, creativity, and confidence, and they can hang with anyone. But right now, they're beating themselves before the opponent even has to.